Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into this deeply ironic collision between modern art, artificial intelligence, and intellectual property law. We're looking at what we call the authorship paradox. It's basically this massive, ongoing conflict between the human spark and mechanical failure.
I mean, think about it. Why is a literally stolen Instagram post worth 90 grand, but a complex, totally breathtaking AI masterpiece is legally considered worthless? It sounds like a bad joke, right? But it's actually the central kind of absurd paradox of modern authorship that we are living through right now. To figure out how we got here, we really have to pull back the curtain and look at what the law actually values.
See, we're dealing with a massive legal double standard. On one hand, you've got the human spark. Our legal systems bend over backward to protect human accidents, appropriation, intent, even moral liability, framing all of it as authentic genius. But then on the other hand, you have mechanical failure. An AI can make billions of advanced computational choices to create something stunning, and the courts just dismiss it. They completely write it off as algorithmic distortion, statistical prediction, and a total lack of consciousness. It's this fundamental clash between messy biological intent and cold mechanical execution.
Which brings us to our first point, the economics of appropriation.
Okay, to understand how human intent magically spins up real-world economic value, you have to look at contemporary artist Richard Prince and his new portrait series. This guy literally took public Instagram posts from other people, added a tiny, usually nonsensical comment, took a screenshot, and then just had his assistants print it on canvas. And the crazy part? These canvases sold for like $90,000 to $100,000 each. It's wild. He basically functions like King Midas. By slapping his authentic brand, his human intent, onto someone else's pixels, he magically generated massive market value. The art market and the law, they value that human selection process, not just the raw visual pixels themselves. But wait, the story actually gets better. So one of the groups Prince appropriated from was the Suicide Girls, and they brilliantly flipped the script by reappropriating his appropriation. They started selling identical prints of their own Instagram posts online for just $90 and gave the profits to the Electronic Frontier Foundation. So the exact same structural pixels existed in both prints, right? But that $90,000 value was tied exclusively to Richard Prince's specific human expression and his sort of market aura. It completely proves that authorship is tied to human identity, not just raw visual data.
Moving on to Section 2, the mechanical failure.
So if human appropriation gets rewarded with massive payouts, what happens when a machine does the heavy lifting? Well, in a landmark case involving computer scientist Stephen Thaler, the court brutally dismissed AI prompting using what they called the jammed printer analogy. They basically argued that typing a text prompt into an AI is just an instruction. It's literally like pushing the print button on a jammed printer, and it accidentally creates this really cool-looking smear of ink. Sure, it might look serendipitous and amazing, but it is completely uncopyrightable. Why? Because the machine executed it. You didn't. You just hit print.
And this all boils down to algorithmic distortion. When you prompt an AI, the unpredictable mathematical choices happening inside that neural network completely sever the legal link to your human intent. The machine is the one deciding the exact placement of a pixel or the specific shading of a line. It completely breaks the fidelity of human control. Because the machine is independently executing the expressive elements, it causes what's called a semantic decapitation of the training data. Legally speaking, this reduces you, the human, to a mere commissioning party. You're basically just hiring a robotic painter. You are not the executing artist. To really wrap your head around this, think of generative AI as a giant mental kaleidoscope. Back in 1967, the cultural theorist Roland Barthes actually coined the term the scripter. A scripter doesn't create anything. It just mixes, copies, and recombines existing cultural data. And generative AI is basically the ultimate digital scripter. It's a highly sophisticated mechanical enabler that takes old data, gives it a spin, and spits out curious new combinations without a single shred of conscious creation.
Let's look at Section 3, Attribution as Human Capital.
Okay, so if the machine can't own the work, why does human credit matter so much? Especially in a world overflowing with both hyper-aggressive corporate IP hoarding and totally free open-source software. Well, these high-minded philosophical concepts actually ground out in hard economic reality. Just look at Creative Commons licenses. They prove that human creators will happily surrender their exclusive rights to distribute their work. They'll let you modify it, they'll even let you make money off of it entirely for free, but the one thing they will fiercely protect: their credit. Get this. When the Creative Commons license tool first launched, it gave creators a menu of permissions to choose from. Do you know how many artists chose the no attribution option? 0. Literally 0. Creative Commons actually had to drop the option entirely because absolutely nobody wanted it. Not a single creator was willing to let their work be used without their name attached. It just goes to show that credit, attribution, is the ultimate human capital. It is the absolute currency of reputation.
And this intense, desperate need for attribution has actually caused a massive resurgence of the old sweat of the brow doctrine in our modern legal system. Since AI doesn't have agency, courts and copyright offices are now demanding proof of immense human labor as a proxy to show that a human actually piloted the AI. We're talking about cases where creators have to submit evidence of writing, like 624 detailed prompts just to prove they maintained undeniable control over the digital scripter. All that physical and mental sweat, it's making a huge comeback as the ultimate proof of the human spark.
Which brings us to our final section, Stewards of the Spark.
So we're basically looking at the new rules of the creator economy. We aren't really these solo romantic geniuses waiting for divine inspiration anymore. We've become orchestrators of the machine. But taking the reins comes with a massive catch, and it's legally known as an agentic tort. This is the real consequence of claiming authorship. When you cross that semiotic bridge and command a machine to execute a task, you're bending a deterministic scripter to your will, and the law is very clear. If you take the credit for the prompt, you absolutely must take the liability for whatever the AI spits out. You can't just throw your hands up and blame the black box.
And that leads us to a frankly terrifying concept by tech scholar Madeleine Claire Elish called the moral crumple zone. Think about the front of a car. It's intentionally designed to crush on impact to save the cabin, right? Well, tech companies are purposefully keeping humans in the loop of AI systems to act as strategic shields. When the algorithm inevitably fails, say it spits out copyrighted material or something harmful, the legal proximate cause shifts entirely to your human error because you failed to supervise it. So yeah, you get the credit as the creator, for sure, but you bear all the risk. You are the moral crumple zone.
So pulling all these threads together, a really stark contrast emerges. In this new paradigm, the human orchestrates intent by bridging the semiotic gap, while the machine just executes deterministic tokens. When it comes to liability, the human commits the agentic tort, while the machine remains this entirely unsuable mechanical scripter. And as for value, the human generates attribution and human capital, while the machine is simply processing that mental kaleidoscope. Bottom line, the human orchestrates, the machine executes.
But let me leave you with this. As brain-computer interfaces evolve, we are fast approaching a point where pure imagination will require absolutely zero physical effort to become a final product. So, what happens when we remove the human author entirely from that semiotic bridge? If the machine handles all the algorithmic distortion and we are just providing a raw electrical impulse straight from our brains, who actually controls the physics of creation? Honestly, think about that the next time you hit generate. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.